you ever feel like you're not really able to listen well while you're playing the drums? You want to sound great and be creative and come up with unique parts for the song. And you want to improvise and just be able to enjoy the music. But these things are often hard to do well without a sharp ear. What's cool though is that listening is actually a learned skill. Yes, some folks just have a good ear. Others even have perfect pitch. I know I don't. While others really struggle with this. But there are specific, concrete, practical exercises you can do to heighten your listening skills and help you become a more musical, creative drummer in tune with what's going on around you so that you play more musically and interact better with a band. You can do this, so let's discuss. Hey, as we get rolling today, I want to give you a free gift, my PDF e-guide, 5 Steps to Learning Any Song in Under 60 Minutes. This guide literally accompanies what we're talking about today, and so be sure to download it. It's your visual companion where we're talking about listening tricks so you hear things you've never heard before on a recording. We're talking about how to predict song form, how to predict the length of song sections. You'll even learn a shorthand notation hack that makes it a lot easier to learn and memorize grooves and drum parts in songs. And in the end, you'll be able to write a cheat sheet chart for most rock, country, pop songs in as little as 15 minutes, which is really cool. So be sure to check out that guide. All right, on with today's lesson. We're just gonna have some fun today listening to music. So there are 2 things you need to get started. Number 1, headphones. Ideally, in-ears, over-ear headphones, whatever you've got around. You could use a pair of speakers, like if you've got a nice quality pair of speakers, that's fine. I like headphones because then you can really immerse yourself more in what you're listening to, and it's easier to shut off the rest of the world when you've got headphones. And so have a pair of headphones ready to go. And then number 2, make sure you've got a high-quality source of music. These days, it seems like everybody's getting their music from one of the big streaming services, and so you're probably already good to go there, whether you're an Apple Music person, a Spotify person, or any of those other streaming platforms out there. Or maybe you're old-fashioned and you've got your CDs and you've got your CD player. That is great too, because we do want high-quality audio. The good thing these days is that we don't really have to sacrifice audio quality that much with streaming because it's gotten so much better over the years. So either way, make sure you've got high-quality source of music, you've got your headphones. We're going to talk about 5 exercises for really training your ears and learning how to listen better in the context of listening to music so that then we can become more musical, creative drummers. We're going to discuss 4 listening exercises. The 5th one is kind of different. It's not just a listening thing. It's kind of a different direction. It's a pivot that we have to make, but it's equally important, so make sure you stick around for that one. All right, exercise number 1. This one is more a habit than it is an exercise. It's something that maybe you have to do as an exercise so that it becomes habit and then you don't have to think about it. But it is this: create an ideal listening environment. So you've got your headphones, you've got your high quality source of music. Find a comfortable chair, a comfortable spot on your sofa, wherever you want to go, where you're able to really shut off the rest of the world and just sit and focus your mind on listening. It is important to be comfortable, because if you're not comfortable or there are a lot of distractions going on around you, then you're probably not going to be able to listen as well as you need to. And so that really is important. For some of you, this might be a no-brainer, where you're like, well, yeah, of course, have a good listening environment. For others of you, it might not be so obvious. I know for myself, I wasn't really doing this well until I was well into college and realizing, oh, I need to actually listen better. I was guilty of preparing for a rehearsal by listening to the songs through my phone speaker, sitting in the cup holder of my old car that I couldn't plug my phone into while on the way to rehearsal. And so, terrible. It's hard to believe I was naive enough to do that, and then eventually realize I'm not actually learning the songs by doing this, because number 1, I'm not hearing everything. I'm not hearing the detail in the recording, but I'm also I'm distracted. I'm driving and I'm hearing half of the recording coming from my cup holder right before the rehearsal. So bad idea. Don't make the mistake I made. Have a dedicated listening environment. And again, many of you guys are already doing this well. I'm proud of you. If you're not, it's okay. Get your headphones on, find a comfortable chair, get ready to really listen deeply. Exercise number 2. So this is more of an actual exercise here. We want to listen actively. So now that we've got our space, we're comfortable, we've got our headphones on, there are some things we need to be thinking about and even questions we need to be asking ourselves as we're listening. As you're listening to a song, be asking yourself, what's coming next in the arrangement? Like, where are we in the song? Even if you're listening to it for the first time, be thinking about what's coming next, what feels like should be coming next. Or if you know the song, then you already know what's coming next, and so you can be listening to where you are right now in the song in light of what you know is coming next. So be thinking about, if you're the drummer in the recording, say you're playing along, you have to be knowing what's coming next. So be thinking about that, kind of getting into the drummer's head and thinking through, all right, what would I be doing now in expectation of what's coming? So be thinking about where we are in the arrangement and what's coming next. How are things feeling? What's the current emotion? And actually, that leads us into some of the other questions here. What's the current dynamic? So wherever you're at right now in the recording, what's the dynamic? Are things quiet? Are things loud? We could also ask that same question as what's the instrumentation? So like in the verse, maybe the drums are still loud, but maybe things are more sparse. Like maybe it's just drums, bass, and vocal in the verse, and then the guitars and the other parts come in during the chorus, and then maybe something new comes in the bridge. But that's something you want to pay attention to. What's the dynamic? Who all's playing? Who all's not playing? What changes from song section to song section? So when you go into the chorus, why did the chorus feel so much bigger? Did everybody get louder? Or did some new instruments get added? Or did new vocals come in? Those are interesting things that sometimes we don't pay attention to until we pay attention to them and until we sit there and intentionally go, huh, something changed, what changed? And then rewind, okay, let me listen to that. Okay, now I hear what's happening. And so pay attention to those dynamic shifts and see if you can ask yourself what created the dynamic shift. Did we get louder? Did we add new instruments? Did the drum part change? And then another good question is, what emotion are you feeling, or what emotion do you feel is being created by the song in that moment? Every song has its emotion. Every song, every good song at least, tells some sort of story. And so there's either something you're going to be feeling as you're listening to it, or if you're not, then you could probably ask yourself, all right, what emotion are they trying to convey? What emotion are they wanting me to feel? Maybe you're a not super emotional person. I'm not a super emotional person. But a lot of times when you're listening to music, you'll find yourself getting sucked into the emotion of the song, and you'll start to feel what you can tell that songwriter was feeling. And so whether or not you get connected in that way, depending on the artist and depending on the song, be asking yourself, what emotion are they conveying? Is this like an emotion of like anxiousness, like something's coming, or there's some sort of tension going on? Or is this an emotion of happiness, of carefreeness? And so ask yourself those things, because that overall emotion of the song, that's going to dictate all the musical decisions that the songwriter and the band members made. And so the story of the song is a huge part, just the story behind the lyrics is often a huge part of the chord structure and the melody and everything. So I know that goes pretty deep, and we could unpack that a lot more and spend a lot of time just on that point. But in a nutshell, listen with the intention of discovering the emotion. Like, what are they trying to convey right now? So to segue into exercise number 3, we were talking about listening to dynamic changes and what's going on in the verse versus what's going on in the chorus, and what parts are shifting, what parts are changing. That can seem like a lot. That can seem overwhelming to sit there and listen and go, okay, what's different between the verse and the chorus and the bridge? Sometimes it's hard to tell. So here's an exercise. We're getting really nitty-gritty here with exercise number 3. Here's an exercise that helps you do that. I just like to call this the 6-listen exercise, and we could easily make it a 5-listen or a 7-listen, but it just happens the way I've always laid this out. It's a 6-listen exercise where we're going to learn how to listen to all the components of a recording, all the different instruments and their nuances and their subtlety. And it's as simple as this. We're just going to listen to the song 6 times, and each time we're listening to something specific and different. And so the first time, listen to the kick drum, listen to the bass. So again, we're in our ideal listening environment. You've got your favorite song on, or just a song you're interested in. It's okay if it's a song you know really well. We don't have to pick a new song here. And actually, this is easier if it's a song you know really well. And so if you've never done this before, start with a song that you know well, where you already kind of subconsciously know what's going on with it. And so that'll make this easier. But put the song on, listen to it once, and just listen to the kick drum and the bass guitar. So paying attention to the rhythm of the bass, because generally the kick drum is locked in with the bass, or they're playing off of each other. And so you can listen to that kind of as one component, bass guitar and kick drum. You could think of kick drum as the articulation, the staccato, the impact of the notes, and the bass is the sustain of those notes. And so those two are often working together depending on the genre, but you could take one listen to focus on that. Then for the second listen, just listen to the snare. Now again, this depends on the song you're listening to. It's possible the snare is not touched during the song, in which case, skip this listen. But in a lot of songs, if it's a rock song especially, there's a lot of snare, there's a lot of backbeat. And so listen to that snare, and if this is an acoustic rock song where it's acoustic drums, it sounds very real, ask yourself, how hard is the drummer hitting the snare? Is the drummer playing rim shots? How's the snare tuned? Is it low? Is it high? Is it ringy? Is it dead? There's so much detail there, so many different things that can influence snare sound, and it can of course be mic'd and mixed, recorded in different ways too. But that can be really fun to just zero in on the snare, because the snare sound affects the drum sound so much, and a snare drum can sound so many different ways. So that can be a really fun listen, just listening to the snare. Listen number 3, listen to the other drum set components. There's a lot of toms. Listen to those toms. How are they tuned? How many toms are there? So I like the 2-tom setup. A lot of rock drummers do this these days. A lot of old jazz drummers did the 2-tom setup. But if you're listening to Rush, Neil Peart had a whole bunch of toms. If you're listening to Dave Matthews Band, same story, lots of toms. And so depending on what band you're listening to, there might be so many toms you can't count. But kind of have an image in your head of, okay, how many toms are there here? What about cymbals? Are you hearing a crash over here and a ride over here? Or are things panned from the audience view rather than from the drummer view? Do you hear the ride cymbal over to the left? And so listen to those things. What part of the ride is the drummer hitting? Bell of the ride, washing on the ride, hitting a crash. What about hi-hats? There's so much intricacy in hi-hats. Are they closed tightly? Are they loose? Are they open? So many questions you can ask yourself. And that's the definition of this critical listening we're trying to do. We're actively asking ourselves questions as we're listening. And so we're trying to find the answers to those questions in the recording. So be asking yourself, how is the drummer hitting the hats? Are they closed? Are they open? Is there left foot timekeeping going on? Do you hear chicks going on over here quietly while there's a tom pattern being played? Listen for those details. You'll be surprised what you find. All right, I think we're at the 4th listen at this point. And it's okay if you don't follow this exactly. These are just guidelines. I like to do this 6th listen thing. So if we're on track here, 4th listen would be the vocal. Now, as a drummer, the vocal is very important, and eventually you might get in your listening to a point where in one listen you can take in all of the drums. And so first listen is all of the drums, and then second listen is vocal. But at this point, it's okay that we've broken it down, and it's fine to do it in multiple listens. So listen number 4, the vocal. This is very important because the vocal and the melody, that's determining the rest of the song. That's determining the lead lines. That's determining the chord structure and the kick drum patterns and all the rhythms of the song. They're all being determined by the vocal and the melody, assuming this is a vocal-driven song, which if it's a typical pop song, rock, country song, it is. And so listen to that vocal part. Listen to how the singer is singing things. Are they right on the beat? Are they a little ahead? Are they laying back? Are they singing loudly, softly? Pay attention to all the nuance of the quality of their voice, of their vocal. And then if you want to go a step further with this, listen to how their voice is interacting with other things on the recording, or really how the other things on the recording are interacting with that vocal. Especially if you're listening to a singer-songwriter type of music where it's very vocal driven and the vocal is right there in the center, forefront of the mix, and everything else is built underneath that. The vocal is often the most important thing. Remember that it influences everything else, and so you want to pay attention to those relationships. How are the other musicians playing parts based off of that vocal? Those are some really cool things to listen for that honestly will take more than just that 4th listen. But the more you listen to a song, the more you'll start to absorb and internalize these things. Listen number 5, pay attention to the guitar. If there's an acoustic guitar, listen to that, or if it's an electric guitar. A lot of times, depending on the genre, there are multiple guitars. There might be an electric over here and an electric over here. But that's where you can also listen to the panning, which is easy to do through headphones. And so see if you can tell, all right, there's a guitar way off here, all right, there's one over here, and it's got this kind of reverb. Pay attention to the reverb, the way that the guitar echoes, the sound of the room that it feels like it's in. That's the reverb. There's also all sorts of effects that can go on that, and we can go crazy because guitar players love to go crazy with effects. But ask yourself questions about, all right, what does the guitar sound like? What does this electric guitar sound like? What does it remind me of? Pay attention to those details, and you might need to do a few listens for this because there may be multiple guitars depending on the genre of the song you're listening to. And then for your 6th listen, listen to the keyboards, the synthesizers, those kinds of sounds that you know are being played on a keyboard, whether it's a piano or it's a more keyboard organ type of sound, a Rhodes, Hammond B3. There's all sorts of different kinds of organ, keyboard, synthesizer sounds, and so it's kind of hard to lump all of this into one listen. And so again, if you want to listen to it multiple times to try to pick out these little details, by all means, do that. One of my favorite records to do this exercise with is John Mayer, Where the Light Is, his Live in LA record from, came out end of 2007, early 2008. And what's really cool, it's all acoustic music being played by real musicians. I say acoustic, there are electronic instruments on it, but it's all being played in real time by real musicians. And so when you listen to the record, you can know that everything you're hearing is being played by somebody on stage. And so if you listen to it, you can make your guess as to what all you're hearing. Then because it's live and because you can find most of it on YouTube, go to YouTube and pull up whatever song from John Mayer, Where the Light Is, and look and see who all's playing. And you'll see that, oh, well, he's playing, he's not playing. Oh, there's the saxophone over there about to come in, or the trumpet about to come in. Oh, well, there's two bass players. What are they both doing? So it's very interesting with that record. It's one of my go-to records for doing this because you can visually match up what your ear is hearing. And that's a great way to develop your ear. When you've got that visual confirmation and you see, oh, he just started playing. Okay, yeah, I just heard him come in. Or, oh, they're both bass players are doing these different parts. I see it all makes sense now because I see what they're doing. I can now hear that. So that can be very helpful. So definitely check that out. John Mayer, Where the Light Is. Go listen to it and then pull it up on YouTube also. All right, exercise number 4. This is kind of I don't know, maybe kind of a weird one, but it's actually really good, really beneficial. This was something I learned from a mix engineer, and I don't remember who it was that first said this. I may have read this in somebody's book, somebody's blog. I may have heard it from an engineer friend. Honestly, don't remember. You may have heard this too. It may sound familiar. Sit and listen to the silence. Especially before you've got to listen to music. Sit and just listen to the silence. The reason mix engineers do this is because they've got to reset their ears before they sit down and they work on mixing somebody's record. And so what this guy would do is he would just sit there in the silence, close his eyes, and listen for, all right, what do I hear going on? What's the ambient sound in this room? Do I hear the AC humming over there? Do I hear a bird chirping outside? Is there a train going by? Is there a truck making a delivery down the road? Is there a distant voice, like somebody shouted over there? Pay attention to those little details, and depending on where you live, this can be really interesting. When I lived in an apartment, I would do this all the time, and I would sit and listen. And so I'd hear somebody's conversation faintly through the wall, or I'd hear a car going by out there, and there would be traffic on the road. And so many sounds going on. If you're in a house, if you're in a basement like this, it can be pretty quiet. But just a minute ago, I heard a lawnmower, like somebody's mowing their grass this morning. And so sit and listen to those things, and that'll help reset your ear and get you very much in that mindset of hearing things that maybe you wouldn't have noticed. When you get yourself into that mindset of noticing things you wouldn't have noticed by intentionally listening, that's going to carry over into when you're listening to music. Now, we're going to move on to the 5th point, which is a little bit of a pivot because we kind of shift direction here away from directly listening. 5th point is going to cover something that helps with all the listening. And so before we move on, if you know that you need to work at these 4 exercises, these 4 things to help develop your listening, by all means, check out that free PDF e-guide, 5 Steps to Learning Any Song in Under 60 Minutes. It's literally your page-for-page companion to this lesson. If you want to have this lesson in printed form, in digital, visual form, go download it. That's going to help you out a lot with this and just maintaining these action steps and making sure you do these things regularly. But now, point number 5. Always be working to push your technical abilities, your hand technique, and your coordination on the drum set so that you can put your physical playing on autopilot and shift more of your focus to that mental listening part of your brain so that you can pay more attention to the music. So get the physical playing, the technique under your belt so that you can listen more and focus on the music. That's big, and that was something that I know I had to get to in order to do this listening well. I knew I wanted to listen better, needed to listen better, but I also needed to get my playing more autopilot and more comfortable and feel more at home at the kit. And so it's very possible that's you, where maybe you have a good ear, maybe you naturally listen really well, and you may have even come from a piano background, a violin background, bass, guitar. You may have played another instrument, so you know you've got that ear. You know how to listen. You know how to hear everything you need to hear, but you struggle doing it while you're playing drum set because you're just not comfortable yet. You're not completely comfortable on the drums, and so you're having to devote too much CPU in a way, too much CPU to the physical, and so you're not really able to listen and be musical. So if that's you, I've got some additional tips, some additional resources for you because I want to make sure you're able to really get on top of these listening tips. Check out a couple of recent lessons here on the channel. One is about how to use Ted Reed's Syncopation, old classic method, for building your coordination. This is a whole bunch packed into a somewhat brief, like 15-20 minute lesson. And there's so much you can do with that method. And so by following that lesson, digging into that, you'll have plenty to work on to build your coordination. So it's in the description. Check that one out. There's also a similar lesson about how to use George Lawrence Stone's stick control to build your coordination. So kind of a different approach, but kind of similar. Same approach, another classic method, and so we're figuring out how can we apply this old classic method to the drum set to build coordination. So those are two really interesting, really helpful lessons. They've helped a bunch of drummers, and so go check those out if you need to build your coordination and also be working on your hand technique. And also there are free e-guides designed to help you with these specific things. And actually, I'm just going to put a link in the description to the page on my website that has all of the e-guides so that you can see them all there and decide which one's right for you. The 3-part daily practice guide is a really good one if you want to work on coordination. It's got all sorts of exercises laid out for you, note for note. If you want to focus on hand technique, check out the Fast Fluid Hands checklist, where we've got photos of my hands and basically just bullet points of saying, make sure you're doing this, make sure you're doing that, so you can know you've got your grip together. So those are two really great guides. Decide which one you want to tackle first, whichever one will be most helpful to you right now, and definitely dig in. So all those links are in the description below. I want to make sure you've got all the further resources to make sure you've got your technique under control so that you can listen, so that you can have fun playing the drums and make music and be creative and improvise and play your favorite songs and play with a band and do all the things that we want to do, that we as drummers are meant to do. I know this might sound like a lot, and you might be realizing that you're at that point where you're getting pretty good at listening, but you know that you've got a lot of coordination and technical work to do. I don't want you to be overwhelmed, and so just pick one of those things. This is all about what is the next step? What's the next step for you? Maybe that next step is just working your coordination a little bit. Go watch the Syncopation video, the stick control video. Or maybe you know that you need to dig even more fundamental than that, and you know that, okay, rebound has been my struggle. I can't play loosely, or I can't play as quickly as I want to. I feel like my hands are just stiff and I'm always fighting something when I'm playing. Fast Fluid Hands checklist. Check that out. And so pick one of those routes. Don't try to get everything all at once. I'm throwing all this at you because I know there are a lot of you in different places right now. And so you have different strengths and different weaknesses, but I hope that this is helping you identify yours and think about doing some self-critique, some self-analysis here, and thinking about, okay, where am I? What is my next step? And so I hope one of these is your clear next step that you can take, so that then you can circle back around to the listening. And maybe you've got your technique and everything under control. Maybe you're ready to dive into the listening, grab that 5 steps to learning any song and under an hour guide, and you will be good to go. Quick side note bonus point. If you come from a musical background where maybe you've played another instrument, you'll already know what I'm talking about. But if drums are your first instrument, then, and you want to go like really in depth with all this, like really training your ear, then learn a tonal instrument, learn some piano. And these days it's so simple to do this. You don't even have to go take piano lessons. There are really good piano learning apps that are out there. Go Google it. There's some really good ones that you can like have the app up on your phone, and it'll listen to you playing and it'll know what you're playing. Technology is great when it comes to this stuff. And so you can just learn piano with an app. All you need is a keyboard or something. And so dig into that if you really want to train your ear, if you really want to learn chord structure and music theory and tonal ear training, like learning how to identify chords, because that really does go a long way as a drummer. When you're able to understand chord structure and communicate with the band, where when they're talking about, hey, when we hit the 5 chord here, we're going to hold this out, and then we're going to land on the 4, it really does help to be in communication with that and not feel left out. And so if you are able to take the time to learn a little bit about another instrument, then do it, because that's only going to help. There's also some good websites for that, like musictheory.net. They have an app called Tenuto that's really great for learning music theory, and there's ear training quizzes too, and so definitely dig into that. All right, that is all for today. Take action on what you've learned today. Identify your next step and take it. Go for it. You can do this. You can master this stuff. I'm proud of you. You are a fellow non-glamorous drummer as you're digging into these non-glamorous skills that really help your drumming across the board. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. I'm so glad to have you. There's a lot of other non-glamorous lessons here to check out. As always, thank you so much for watching. Stay non-glamorous. You can do this. See you on the next lesson.